What if the most dangerous battlefield you will ever face is not outside in the world? His masterwork, the Book of 5 Rings, written in a cave in the mountains as he neared the end of his life, is not simply a manual on sword fighting. It is a philosophy of life. And at the very core of that philosophy sits one foundational principle: the man who can master himself can master anything. This essay is about that mastery. It is about what Musashi believed, how he lived, and what his teachings mean for you and your emotional life today. The water mind, stillness as strength. Musashi used the element of water as his central metaphor for the ideal state of mind. In the Book of 5 Rings, he describes the Water Book, the second of his 5 volumes, as the chapter dedicated to the spirit of the individual warrior. Water, he observed, has no permanent shape. It takes the shape of whatever vessel it occupies. It is perfectly still when undisturbed and immensely powerful when in motion. It reflects everything around it without distortion. This is exactly the kind of mind Musashi wanted. Not rigid, not chaotic, not clouded by passion or fear or ego, but clear, adaptable, responsive, and deep. Emotional control, in Musashi's view, was not about suppressing your feelings or pretending they did not exist. It was about cultivating a mind so still and so clear that emotions could not take root in it and cloud your perception. When you are afraid, your body tightens, your vision narrows, and you begin to make reactive decisions based on what you want to avoid rather than what you need to do. When you are angry, you become predictable. When you are overconfident, you stop seeing clearly. All of these emotions, left unmanaged, become liabilities that an enemy, or life itself, can exploit. The water mind is the antidote. It means entering every situation without preloaded assumptions, without ego investment in a particular outcome, and without the trembling urgency of unchecked emotion. It means seeing things as they are, not as you fear them to be. In practical terms, Musashi developed this through decades of solitary practice, meditation, and what he called polishing the spirit. He spent years wandering Japan alone, a practice called Musha Shugyo, warrior pilgrimage, deliberately stripping away comfort, companionship, and material security so that he could come face to face with himself, stripped of all distraction. The enemy within, understanding what emotions actually are. Before you can control something, you have to understand it. Musashi was deeply analytical about the nature of emotion and its relationship to performance and perception. He recognized that emotions are not random intrusions. They are responses to perceived threat or opportunity. The problem is that our emotional responses are often wildly disproportionate to reality, shaped more by past wounds, ego, and social conditioning than by what is actually happening in front of us. Fear, for instance, tells you that something dangerous is present. But fear also activates long before genuine danger arrives. It fires at the possibility of embarrassment, at the prospect of loss, at uncertainty and ambiguity. For a swordsman, fear at the wrong moment is fatal. It causes hesitation, and hesitation is death. But the solution is not to be fearless in the naive sense of having no fear. That is recklessness, not courage. The solution is to be so deeply familiar with fear that you can feel it, acknowledge it, and continue moving without being paralyzed by it. Musashi trained specifically for this. He would put himself repeatedly in situations of extreme pressure, not to destroy his capacity to feel fear, but to familiarize himself so thoroughly with the experience of fear that it lost its power to disrupt him. The emotion was still there, but it no longer commandeered his mind. The same logic applies to anger. Anger is energy. It has a purpose. It mobilizes you to confront injustice or defend yourself against threat. But uncontrolled anger makes you sloppy, loud, and predictable. An opponent who knows you are angry already has the advantage. They can manipulate your aggression, draw you into overcommitment, and use your own force against you. Musashi was famous for his use of psychological tactics in duels, arriving deliberately late to provoke frustration, feinting to trigger reactive movements, all designed to destabilize the emotional control of his opponents. He understood that a man whose emotions are running hot is already half defeated. Do nothing that is of no use. One of Musashi's most famous principles is deceptively simple: do nothing that is of no use. At first glance, this sounds like a productivity principle. But in the context of emotional control, it cuts much deeper. Most emotional turbulence is generated not by the event itself, but by the story we tell about the event. Someone criticizes you, and the criticism is over in 10 seconds. But the suffering generated by that criticism can last for days, weeks, even years, replayed, reinterpreted, magnified by the stories we build around it. They don't respect me. I'm not good enough. Everyone is watching. I'm going to fail. None of these stories exist in external reality. They are generated entirely within the mind. And they are, in Musashi's framework, completely useless. Musashi had an extraordinarily sparse and disciplined inner life. His paintings, calligraphy, poetry, and writings all share the same quality. They contain nothing unnecessary. Not a wasted brushstroke, not a wasted word. He applied this same principle to his thoughts and emotional responses. If a thought or feeling was not directly useful, if it did not serve the task at hand, if it did not sharpen his perception or improve his strategy, he let it go. Not through violent suppression, but through a calm, practiced refusal to feed it. This is a radical act of mental discipline that most people never even attempt. We are so accustomed to following our emotional reactions wherever they lead that the idea of simply choosing not to engage with a feeling seems almost incomprehensible. But Musashi's entire life was built on this practice, and the results speak for themselves. Detachment from outcome, the philosophy of Mushin. Central to Musashi's approach to emotional control is the concept of Mushin, a Japanese term that translates roughly as no mind or empty mind. Mushin is the state in which the mind is not fixed on anything, not on fear of failure, not on desire for success, not on the opinions of others, not on the weight of past mistakes or the anxiety of future consequences. It is the mind in a state of pure, present, attentive readiness. This concept is difficult for Western minds to fully grasp because we are so deeply conditioned to believe that caring intensely about outcomes is what drives us to perform well. We think that if we are not afraid of failure, we will not try hard enough. We think that if we are not anxious, we are not taking things seriously. But Musashi's entire life was a refutation of this idea. The paradox of Mushin is that by releasing your attachment to the outcome, you actually perform at a higher level. When you are not gripped by the fear of losing, your mind is free to see clearly. When you are not consumed by the desire to win, your actions are free to emerge naturally and precisely from the moment. There is no hesitation, because hesitation is born from conflicting desires, the desire to act and the fear of acting wrongly. Remove the fear, and action flows freely. Modern sports psychology has arrived at the same conclusion through a completely different route. The concept of flow state, the condition of peak performance described by psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, is almost identical to Mushin. Athletes in flow describe exactly the same experience. Time slows down, the mind becomes quiet, The body acts with a precision and fluidity that feels effortless. They are not trying to control the outcome. They are simply present with the process. Musashi did not use any of this language, but he lived it, practiced it, and taught it to those who would listen. His path to Mushin was not through relaxation or visualization, but through the relentless years-long practice of his craft, performed alone, performed in silence, performed without an audience or the need for external validation. The 1,000 days and the 10,000 days. Musashi speaks often in his writings about what he calls the 1,000 days of practice and the 10,000 days of practice. The first is the beginning of discipline. The second is the beginning of mastery. And embedded in this concept is a profound insight about emotional control that is easy to overlook. Emotional regulation is a skill. Like sword fighting, like calligraphy, like any other skill, it is developed through practice, not through reading about it, not through intellectual understanding, but through repeated, effortful, deliberate practice over a very long period of time. Musashi had no patience for people who sought shortcuts. He did not believe in them. He believed that real transformation, of technique, of character, of mind, only came through the accumulation of genuine effort applied consistently over time. What does this mean practically? It means that every time you face an emotional trigger, every time you feel the surge of anger and choose not to act on it, every time you feel the pull of fear and take a breath before responding, every time you catch yourself spiraling into a useless story and return your attention to the present moment, you are practicing. You are adding to your 1,000 days. You are building the neural pathways of regulation, the habit of response rather than reaction, the muscle of stillness under pressure. It is slow work. Musashi spent 30 years alone before he felt he had truly understood. But the direction is clear, and each day of honest practice brings you closer to the water mind, to the state where emotion informs you rather than controls you. Pride, ego, and the danger of the self. Perhaps the most dangerous emotion Musashi identified was not fear or anger, but pride. Pride is subtle. It disguises itself as confidence, as self-respect, as the reasonable protection of one's dignity. But Musashi was ruthless in his rejection of it. He lived his entire adult life without a home, without a wife or family, without wealth or luxury of any kind. He wore simple clothes, carried basic tools, and asked nothing of the world except the freedom to practice his way. This was not poverty forced upon him. Musashi had numerous opportunities to accept positions of wealth and power. He refused them all, because he understood that comfort, status, and social identity are chains. They create things to protect. And when you have things to protect, including the image of yourself, you can be manipulated because someone can always threaten what you value. Pride creates a version of yourself that you must constantly defend. Any criticism, any defeat, any failure becomes an attack on this precious image, and the emotional reaction is explosive and disproportionate. The person who has surrendered their pride has nothing to defend. They can receive criticism without flinching because they are not identified with their performance. They can lose without shame because they do not need to win to feel whole. This is perhaps the most spiritually demanding aspect of Musashi's philosophy. Letting go of pride feels like annihilation to the ego. It requires a fundamental shift in what you believe yourself to be. Musashi's answer was to identify not with results, not with reputation, not with the approval of others, but with the way itself, with a daily commitment to practice, to honesty, to the never-ending refinement of perception and character. Presence as practice, living in the moment. Musashi's philosophy anticipates what modern mindfulness traditions describe as presence, the radical, full-bodied inhabitation of the current moment. For Musashi, this was not a therapeutic practice or a relaxation technique. It was a survival requirement. In a duel, you cannot be thinking about what happened yesterday or worrying about what might happen tomorrow. Every fragment of attention that is captured by the past or the future is a fragment not available for the present moment. And in the present moment is where the opening is. The gap. The breath before the strike. A mind divided between now and then will miss it. But Musashi extended this same principle to all of life. He believed that most human suffering, most anxiety, most regret, most resentment, is generated by living either in the past or the future instead of the present. The past is fixed and cannot be changed. The future is uncertain and cannot be controlled. The only moment in which you can actually do anything is now. And if you are fully present in now, fully awake, fully attentive, fully alive to this moment, there is very little room for the kind of swirling emotional noise that makes most people miserable. This is not the same as ignoring the past or failing to plan for the future. It means that when you are in the present moment, you are in the present moment, not simultaneously half alive in some other time. Musashi carried this so fully that observers noted how, even in conversation, even at rest, he had an uncanny quality of total presence. He was not performing being there. He simply was there, completely. The way of walking alone. Late in his life, Musashi wrote a document called Dokkodo, The Way of Walking Alone. It is a list of 21 principles he had distilled from 60 years of living and dying by his philosophy. It is among the most concentrated pieces of wisdom in Japanese literature, and almost every principle on that list is, at its core, a principle of emotional regulation. Do not seek pleasure for its own sake. This is a warning against the emotional tyranny of desire. Do not act following customary beliefs. This is a call to examine rather than react. Do not hold on to possessions you no longer need. This includes the possessions of the mind, old grievances, outdated identities, comfortable illusions. Accept everything just the way it is. This is the deepest principle of all, the distillation of a lifetime of practice. Radical acceptance of reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. This final principle is perhaps the most transformative thing Musashi offers us. The root of most emotional suffering is resistance, the furious, exhausting insistence that things should be different from how they are. The world should be fair. People should behave better. You should not have to face this difficulty. But the world is what it is. People are who they are. The difficulty is here. And every moment spent fighting reality is a moment of wasted energy, a moment of suffering that serves no purpose. Acceptance is not passivity. Musashi was not passive. He was one of the most actively engaged human beings who ever lived. But he accepted reality before engaging with it. He saw things as they were before deciding what to do. That clarity, born from acceptance, was the foundation of everything he accomplished. Bringing Musashi's wisdom into your life. You are unlikely to fight a sword duel. But you face battles every day, in your relationships, your work, your inner life. The opponent in those battles is often not another person but the turbulence of your own unregulated mind. Musashi's path is not complicated, but it is demanding. It asks you to observe your emotional reactions without immediately following them. It asks you to distinguish between emotions that are genuinely informative, fear that signals real danger, anger that signals genuine injustice, and emotions that are simply the noise of an untrained mind. It asks you to practice stillness daily, to return again and again to the present moment, to loosen your grip on outcomes and identities and the desperate need for things to be different from how they are. It asks you, above all, to commit to the long road. Not the 1,000-day road of initial discipline. Not even the 10,000-day road of early mastery. But the road that never ends, that winds through every season of your life, that sharpens you slowly and deeply in the way that only decades of genuine practice can. Musashi died at the age of 60, in a cave, alone, writing. He had given away everything he owned. He had no family, no fortune, no title, no empire. What he had was the way, refined to a point of diamond clarity by 60 years of walking it. He left us the Book of 5 Rings. He left us Dokkodo. He left us the story of a life lived entirely on his own terms, in total fidelity to his principles, without apology and without compromise. He left us the most important question a human being can ask. Who is in control of your mind right now, you or your emotions? The answer to that question determines everything. Today is victory over yourself of yesterday. Tomorrow is your victory over lesser men. Miyamoto Musashi.